I want to, I can bring it up and I can share screen if you like to present. Like, I want to say up front that this is not something we've actually implemented. This is something that we have spent a lot of time trying to implement. And if you could get points for trying, we would get a lot of points. There were a lot of attempts, and I think, and there will continue to be attempts. And I think at what we're trying to build, it was a team of us at SIMBA Chain and some partner firms, one in particular, and of how to, of really a public health alert system or a local alert. We call it the local health alert system. So it's not anything that we have implemented, but we have, boy, have we written papers and proposals that were really extensive that we put tons of hours on that did not get funded. Some, it may eventually get funded. And it's something that came out of when COVID first hit. And we think that it is applicable even outside of the COVID world. Or even post-COVID, like just as part of like our public health infrastructure, both nationally and frankly, globally too. And it utilizes blockchain technology at its core. And it utilizes token, NFTs and token technology as well. Although one thing I'll also forewarn you before I dive into the presentation, we don't treat this as a token, quote unquote token, or even a blockchain application. What we do, and this was an attempt to try to get funding, maybe we should change our approach, maybe that'll be more successful. We talk much more about the value and benefits that they bring, and don't really even, barely even, we have some mention of blockchain and very little mention of token, probably no mention of token actually on this version of it. On longer versions, we do mention it, but under the 50-page proposal versions, but on the summary PowerPoint versions, we don't even mention, you know what I mean? And so it's, and that is deliberately so, because we're trying to play to a generalist audience to try to get, them to fund this, and who not necessarily blockchain enthusiasts, or token enthusiasts like this group is, like all of us here are, or at least block. And truthfully, I'm much more of probably a blockchain guy than necessarily a token guy, just kind of upfront. And so, but the concepts are obviously, very closely interrelated. So with all that disclaimer out front, I'm happy to dive in and share my screen.
And John, just like we talked about, really, I think there's value in that struggle, in trying to get this project along, that would help us understand what, opportunity gaps exist, or what kinds of things, I would be really curious to see what your reflective, iterative, plans were when you hit these different challenges, because when things go well, the good times take care of themselves. I think there's a lot of value in education in the failure, or quote unquote failure.
No, I think that's great feedback, and I appreciate that. Dr. Keisha. In fact, part of this presentation is we talk about what our scale up plan is, and where we could see this thing, how this could progress, and we can even give you, I can give you some feedback of what what some of the feedback we got along the way, and that kind of drove the decisions in terms of how we position this in terms of the scale up. And so this is the group what we call LHAS, Localized Health Alert System, to prevent, detect, and manage national health risks and healthcare supply chain resilience at the local level. And the supply chain, to be clear, was something that we threw in part at the end, in part because we got some interest actually from a consortium, a quasi-government consortium that does a lot of work on supply chains, and would have an interest there. And therefore we put that healthcare supply chain thing into it because we figured that would give it a better chance of getting funding. And it did get some initial interest and it's how these government funding mechanisms work can sometimes be complicated, but the initial group was very interested, who themselves had, were in a position to receive half their funding from various government agencies. They could not then convince the end government grantors as of yet to fund it through some of the emergency funding that came through the CARES Act. That doesn't mean that we might not have more luck in 2021, especially if there's more legislation that gets passed. That may increase the trough of that funding. If long-term public health resilience is a priority, hopefully with the new administration, it will be a priority. One would think it would be a priority, but that will then probably shift from a response to more of a long-term resilience play. that could increase the chances of something like this getting some, some part of funding. I can also talk about what we've done to try to even crowdsource this and going to crypto funds. I can share with you some of the feedback we got there that was frankly surprising, but I'd be happy to share that with you guys. I think for information purposes, but also for feedback purposes, like, to get your thoughts on this, because, this is as much a, me presenting to you to also asking for advice, like what do you guys have to say, to
we are
people
totally, and like I said, I feel there's major value in this project, in the share, and even in the state that it's in, because we are a group where we're looking at the business application of blockchain.
Yeah, you're
startups. We're curious about starting our own projects, being a part of projects, and that process. We know it is quite a process.
Yeah.
Business opportunities that we're engaged in. Cherie in particular, she's engaged in supporting entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, and African American. So, there's a lot of education that is required to bridge a lot of the gaps, and quite frankly, to try to make sense of what it is the venture capitalists are looking for, what the grantees are looking for, whatever it is. So I think that your process, like I said, your challenges and whatnot will be valuable shares for many of us who have projects we're starting and have gotten off the ground and maybe experiencing some.
Yeah, no, that's great. You can see my screen? Okay, Localized Health. So the core entities on this is Prysm Group, our partner firm. They're a blockchain economics consulting firm, and then SIMBA, my firm. Notre Dame is on this proposal. They were part of one of the proposals that we gave as a partner to help with a couple of things around wearables. To be clear, like they're there, and we're happy to have their logo here, but it's predominantly Prysm and SIMBA, with support from some support from Notre Dame's huge university, but some of the folks there. So what's the problem out there? I mean, obviously we're a year into COVID, so I don't really have to really sell anyone on the impact of global pandemics being a concern, right? Frank, this proposal was done, this idea was thrown, we as COVID was building up, we put this together in the early days, and then by the time we completed, it was April of last year. And so at that point, we didn't need too much more convincing. And I hope at this point, we don't need any convincing. I mean, clearly, early detection, we know studies have shown that early detection can make a difference in saving hundreds of thousands of lives. And as the year has gone on, we have seen case studies all over the world of the countries that were able to detect quickly and then, of course, move quickly, fared much better than those who did not. I mean, Vietnam got through this with 0 deaths, which is amazing. And, they were South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, they not 0 deaths in Japan. Japan's a big country, but if you look at those countries that have really strong detection capabilities and contact tracing capabilities, part of it is candidly, like they're right next to China. And so they kind of have to, they got some, I mean, not to be mean, but you kind of have to do that. They do a lot of trade in China. There's a lot of tourism that goes back and forth. Business travelers go back and forth. And so you kind of have to, and so they have to have strong capabilities to handle public health. Like people wear, it's not just the detection. I mean, people wear masks. It's not controversial. If you're sick, you just wear a mask. It's just what you do for your fellow humans. And so for a whole host of reasons, those countries were able to, withstand this really well, even though they were right next to China. They had less advanced warning, but part of that was early detection that could then inform action. And so we wrote this proposal back, this presentation, although it's been tweaked a little bit, the bulk of it was done, last April. Now we're in February, we're 10 months on. And I would say, if anything, like everything that we've seen has only validated our initial hypotheses, in terms of early detection being a critical part of this and being able to respond. And so this is the problem, is we don't need to talk about other countries are succeeding. It was clear in April, and it's clear now. If you look at places like New Zealand, they have not had a single case of public transmission in weeks or months now. I mean, it's something very long time. And so, in places like Israel, the health ministry has started texting people who come in contact with corona patients and were located by a digital cell phone tracking system that they needed to enter 14-day quarantine. 400 people got the first text. So, and then you compare that to in Taiwan, my phone, which is satellite tracked by the Taiwanese government to enforce quarantine, ran out of battery at 7:30 a.m. By 8:15, 4 different units called me. By 8:20, the police were knocking at my door. Now, I'm not here to tell you that this is necessarily what other societies should adopt. The police at my door at 8:20. What I'm saying is that they were able to detect early and then respond quickly. And that gives you an idea of how fast time, a place like Taiwan was able to respond. I also probably don't need to say that having that kind of a surveillance system is not really tenable in a lot of places and not tenable in the US. It's going to get a lot of skepticism from lots of parts of our population for very, very good reason. And, having this kind of a surveillance system. But yet, the countries that succeeded had at least some form of a surveillance system, maybe not quite. I mean, in China, they went very harsh after, not to get into commentary on that. They first tried to cover it up, but then they moved in, but they could do things in China. You could do things that you could not do in other places, and for good reason. I'm glad I don't live in a place that the government can do what they can do in China. I'm quite glad I don't. But even in a place like Taiwan, like there's a very strong kind of surveillance infrastructure around public health, and other countries as well. If you look at, and the Taiwan example is more of an extreme example, a little bit more extreme, not as extreme as China, but Vietnam and South Korea and Japan, they don't quite do that, but they still have very good public health surveillance that allows them to detect and respond quickly. And the impact to their countries in terms of death, in terms of also the economic shutdowns, has been far more muted than what you have seen in other places in the US, and frankly, a lot of other places, not just in the US, but a lot of places. And so, people are succeeding. It's not like this is an unsolvable problem. It can succeed. But the problem in the US is, well, kind of already went into this, is our options are constrained. Tracking Americans' whereabouts without and accessing their personal data without consent violates long established social and legal norms. We know that. And as a result of those constraints, our current resources are news outlets and messaging boards. Well, we know how reliable they are. And then, which is limited and provides totally non-targeted alerts at a general level. So, so what do we have? We have a problem where you can't really detect, okay? You can't really respond because the responding is very non-targeted. It's just mass emails, mass message boards, put alerts on, your news, and hope that the people that you want to see. That is, that's still, that's not effective. Not that you shouldn't do that, but the results are not going to be what you had if you had a real public health kind of detection and response system. And so, then on top of that, there are a number of groups that are working on how do you address this problem, but they fail to account for kind of individual preferences. So there are, for instance, these contact tracing applications that a lot of state governments in the U.S. have put out. I live in Virginia. Virginia has an app. California, different states have apps, but there is no incentive system to get people to actually join. There's nothing really in it for them. And so how do you actually design a platform that's going to be widely used? And our hypothesis is it needs to address two things. One is you need to respect the norms, both social and frankly legal norms around privacy. If you're going to do this in the U.S. or frankly in a lot of different places, in some places in the East Asian Pacific region, you can get away with a lot more. There's just different norms about that. It's not about right or wrong. It's just different norms. So you need to protect norms around privacy, and you need to have it has to be incentive compatible. That there has to be ways that there's something in it for me. You can't just do this and expect people to report their status to an app because for the public good. It actually can get you some mileage in East Asian cultures. Unfortunately, US, that doesn't get you much mileage. You can get the public good is not enough to get people to move, unfortunately. You can get some movement, but not the level that you really need. So you need some way that people know that their privacy is protected. You're not just giving your data to the government or Google or Microsoft. and that there's incentive for you. So I think you guys know where I'm going with this, okay? Because what is a tool that is very good or very compatible with, or in line with protecting privacy and kind of empowering the individual and also building in incentives? We all know, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we fall into. So that's how we kind of position this and sell this. And so this is what we're proposing. So we do use the word blockchain in here. I mean, we're not shying away from it. Blockchain be decentralized app that allows individual Americans to securely store data, store their data in mobile devices, their health records and location histories and data in order to create a national live decentralized database. LHAS queries information from all individuals, provide real-time localized alerts and recommendations to prevent, detect, and manage outbreaks. So ultimately, that is like, if I was to give the shortened version of it, this is it. I have several more slides to go, but this is the kind of the what, the so what, and why we're a blockchain company partnering with another blockchain company, now presenting to a group of blockchain experts and enthusiasts. That's why we're here, and that we believe that if we had something like this up and running, we could have responded to COVID much better. And if we built something like this in the future, we'll be able to better position to respond to other health crises in the future better. Bottom line, now, the devil's in the details, like in terms of, and we've got some thoughts in the next few slides, but I'll just stop right there and just kind of get the feedback. Like this is the this of what we're trying to do. And, the solution, a privacy, proving technology, where the participant data is fully, preserved. Data is solely stored in encrypted format on participants' mobile phones. And the other thing I should say is that you may be asking, where is the token to all this? Okay, this is blockchain. That's great. It's verifiable credentials, individual verifiable credentials, another big blockchain concept. Where's the token? The token is around the payment and the incentives. That's where the tokenomics comes into this. And our partners in this, the Prysm group, they're an economics consulting firm. So that's really their thing. It's actually less of a SIMBA thing. We're the technology people. But Prysm are the economist people, and so their whole thing is that you need it's not just verifiable, it's not just controlling your own data, although that's important. It's not just verifiable kind of individual credentials, although that's still very important. You also need the tokenomics aspect as a way of delivering incentives to people to participate and share their data. So they're empowered to share it. So they get something for it. Sorry, I will stop. I'll take a breath.
That makes absolute sense. And I'm loving too that again, I'm looking at a great solution. I think, in terms of how it's set up so far, I don't see why there was pushback, I guess. Because zero knowledge.
Yeah, I don't either.
to provide that safety. And maybe that was what it was. Maybe they didn't trust that there was, that you were able to actually preserve, do all things, because this would be awesome. If this really could be pulled off, which I would imagine it really, really could. But there's just still some power structures, I feel like, that still want to have some control in that center. They don't want to really bring things out to the edge, which is what this solution is definitely proposing.
Yeah, it's a great question. And we have pitched this to various entities in the government. I think part of it is we just didn't, so much of the craziness when COVID hit, and then you had the CARES Act, and it's just getting stuff into relief. It's like building something like this, I think, was probably seen as, as not something that could help us immediately. Like, it would take time to build this out. It would take 6 months, but if you had done this back in May, 6 months would have been 2 months ago. So it could have helped with, and we're still going. And so, I think that's probably part of it. I think, the agencies that we pitched this to, that SIMBA pitched this to, that we have the most connections with, are connected to manufacturing and the Department of Defense, and public health is not really like in their, they can do that, but it's not in their core area. And the public health agencies like the NIH and the CDC, they, I have hypotheses, but they probably offering a little bit of commentary, but I'll stay away from that. I'll maybe touch it, but they just weren't until very recently the way they were under a lot of pressure in 2020, and they weren't really empowered to try anything that was probably too experimental. I'll just leave it at that.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that. And so that is, and if we, and so that's what it is. Anyways, I could go on, but I'll pause there for more questions. I can also give you some feedback on some of the thoughts that we got from some of the crypto funds that we approached.
So you called out the application to health and our health records, and I've seen some similar work being done out of Australia with an outfit over there, ShareRing. So maybe you could compare and contrast, because I was particularly interested in their whole concept of this digital passport. So if I'm traveling, I can digitally, verify that I'm COVID-free or been tested.
And I'm not super familiar with that. I know Australia has deployed a mobile app that has some of these characteristics. And if they may have, and my information that might be a little dated. So if they've progressed in the last few months, I'm not aware of that. It has some of these approaches, not all of them, certainly not on the incentive side. You're right. And part of what in the long version of this, the 40-page proposal version of this, we talk about this being, you could use this immediately to respond to COVID, but longer term, this could become infrastructure for health passports and health records and vaccination certificates, that kind of stuff. I believe sharing is much more focused on that side of it and less of a detection and response, and certainly nothing on the tokenomics and the incentive side. As far as I know, unless if they've announced something the last few months, I'm not aware of. So I'll be honest about that.
Yeah, and with the focus for you guys being U.S., North America, what's the focus?
Well, we're American companies, so
okay.
I mean, we will take it all the other places, but I mean, we've had a hard enough time just getting it funded in our own backyard. So
sure.
We haven't tried going other places. Maybe we should have, or maybe we should, but
aim big.
US is just where we are.
Big or go home.
Yeah. So we're doing it here. I mean, we're not, huge entities, but yeah, what we know is the US. And so, so that's where we focused most of our attention. But no, this is certainly could be applied elsewhere. So any other questions?
I would definitely hope this proceeds. Because this definitely is an infrastructure. Like you said, maybe the timing was absolutely too much of a paradigm shift, right in the middle of a paradigm shifting experience. So but I'm sorry about that, Eric. Go right ahead. You had a question.
No, thank you. And so so here we get into a little bit of the incentive compatible system. So bringing in tools from behavioral economics and economics of incentive design to try to get meaningful participation through rewards. And so the kind of the if you look at, monetary and short-term would be little things like, referral bonuses, deductible subsidies, but long-term would be, for instance, the long-term play on this, the hope was, and still remains to bring this to similar to a safe driving app on your Geico application, or I have Geico car insurance, but wherever your car insurance provider is, you have like a safe driving app, I think. And then if you do this and then you get like a benefit for your premium, to bring something like this to the health insurance companies and be like, if you participate in this to a greater degree, you'll get a benefit to a premium benefit or something. Even if it's a small benefit, like health insurance companies have an incentive for you to not get COVID, right? Clearly. And they don't want you to get COVID. And so the incentive, so, getting, long-term of various degrees of participation to translate into some type of premium benefit in the long term. And then a short term on the non-monetary side is kind of giving sorts of kind of behavioral nudges using behavioral economics and similar behavioral psychology in those fields to get people to participate more. And in the long term, if you participate more to get like preferred access, like for instance, it's not just you being given certain types of monetary incentives for participating delivered through some type of token mechanism, but also wouldn't you want to participate more to share your data so you can get access to other people's anonymized data? So, for instance, a particular location is a high traffic location with a lot of COVID positive people. That's something that you would want to, that is information, that's non-monetary, but that's information that could be valuable to you, much like a traffic app is valuable to you. Having public health information could be valuable to you. Having it, or for instance, taking this to another direction, like going to a restaurant that we've rated, like has a Yelp rating of not very crowded, for instance, or have more space for social distancing, wouldn't you want to know that before you go? So having these types of preferred access if you participate. So the incentive system is not just around, monetary, but around non-monetary benefits and access to information that would be valuable to you. And blockchain technology, and truthfully, is probably more of a quote unquote blockchain play than it is a token play, to be candid. But there's still, ultimately, you would still deliver this information through some type of a tokenized mechanism, would still be there. You could still bring it, there would still be play for NFT here, but blockchain gives you that type of granularity of targeted kind of access, targeted incentives, targeted everything. It's like the personalization, that individual level targeting that blockchain and blockchain related technologies can give you, we feel is a great use case for, something like this, where it's the opposite of the mass market. Let's just blast the news. Let's just put out advertisements everywhere and say, hey, don't wear a mask, or not, don't wear, sorry, please wear a mask, please social distance, please don't go here. That's just non-targeted. It has a place. It's better than nothing. But we live in such of an individualistic culture that you need like individualized solutions in a way that, say, in the Pacific Basin, where the culture is different. And, and so people are not going to, for instance, go and not wear a mask because you're not going to, like, the culture is such that, of course, I'm going to socially distance. Of course, I'm going to let the authorities know that I'm sick. And of course, I'm going to accept them monitoring me to let me know that that I came into contact with a sick person, or vice versa. Like in the US, that stuff is not going to fly. So it's more of an individualistic culture. So you need individualistic solutions, and blockchain and tokenized solutions are aligned with that. So that's at least what we thought. Haven't convinced anybody to give us any money yet, but that's what we've tried.
Anjon, I got a question though about this.
Sure.
Like one of the things that I've learned from one of our BBC Inner Circle members, Tanisha Shine, who her background is in tech, but also is in healthcare, is that health data is some of the most valuable data in the world.
Yeah.
And people are always trying to go and hack it and find it and go and manipulate it and use it and that sort of thing. Do you feel that you've gotten some of the pushback? Because
yes,
right now people like that system working the way it works, where it doesn't really empower the individual, whereas yours is going to do that.
Yeah, I think that, I think that, Eric, good question. And I think that the first part of what you said, 100%, that dealing with health data is like what's the right word? It's like a fifth rail. Is that, guys familiar with that term, the fifth rail? Like you don't touch it. It's like the subway. If you live in a city and you go to the subway and you touch that, you might get shocked. Like, you're killed if you're in New York. I don't know. I live in DC. So you go to the subway and you get shocked. And I'm born in New York City. Like I always, when I was a kid, it's like, hey, my mom's like, don't go there. You're going to get shocked. It's like the fifth rail. Healthcare data is like the fifth rail, or the third rail. Is that it? Is it the third rail? But it's something you don't touch because you get hurt, you get killed. And so, yeah. So, so health data is like that. Nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to mess with it. It's very small c conservative for a reason, and in the US, probably even more so, because around HIPAA and, and for various reasons. And there's no doubt in my mind that was part of why people just didn't want to touch this. And I'll say this, like, we are weak on, notice how the firms in this, there's no healthcare firm on this. There's none. We don't have any healthcare specialists. We're all faking it. I mean, well, kind of. We had a university. Now we got Notre Dame to come in and to help us out. on some guys that deal with healthcare and at least health IT stuff, are Notre Dame partners. And Notre Dame, they have, for those of you who don't know, SIMBA Chain came out of the Notre Dame ecosystem. They have an equity relationship with us. The university's investment fund does. But we were interacting with another university in their public health team to be on this team. Ends up that we did not end up going with them because just to even get them involved required like insane amounts of funding that we couldn't even get this amount of funding just to get this project up and running. And these guys needed this amount just to, you can't see them in my screen, but it's like, they need a lot of money. And it was like an extremely glamorous university. I'm not going to state their name, but it's somebody that every single one of you have heard of. And it's like an extraordinarily glamorous university. So very famous university with just famous people who, we were talking to the postdoc we were talking to, and her boss is like a guy on TV and that kind of stuff. And so the problem when you try to play with people like that is, it's just it's like they don't even talk to you if you don't have $1 million for them, right off the bat in the first round of funding. We'll be lucky to get, it's like $1 million we're going to hope to get in our first round for the whole thing, not just for you. And so, that did not help either. Now they did help in writing the proposal. And they did help validate everything we've said here. But the fact that we didn't have them all totally committed, knocking on doors with us, is no doubt is part of where we, there's a missing piece, on something like this.
I would definitely say that was a huge one then, if that was the team, because I know considering startups and the like, that's what they look at is the team.
Yeah.
So that would be a big fire against you guys, I guess, or check against you guys. Because it's true that the project is sound. I mean, there's sound what you're talking about in the setup and all of that. So yeah. So I certainly hope you'll continue with it.
We do.
Sure.
We hope, and we are open to advice from anybody from the BBC or your network. So I do want to talk about, what is the approach we took? So our hypothesis, and we had some research to back this up, that in the beginning, the short-term funding, we would need to bootstrap it. We have the founding companies that would focus on the product design, and we would need subsidies. And we would, in the very beginning, our look on this, we had actually did approach insurance companies on this, the big ones, several of the big health insurance companies. And they all said, your idea is really interesting. When you get something up and running, give us a call. And that was our hypothesis. And it was backed up. Every one of them said that, and not everyone, and we talked to the innovation arms of several of the big insurance companies that probably people on this call are customers. And so that's what they all said. This is a really cool idea, the innovation, but I don't have the funding and the authority to fund something like this because the insurance companies are small c conservative. So the beginning, the only people that are going to fund this are the government. No one else is going to fund something like this was our hypothesis, because this is a money losing, this is not going to make money for a long time. And the value to this in the long term, a big part of the value of this is going to be a public health kind of value. It's a social good value. Not that this can't be a very profitable business eventually as well, but for something like this, it's like government and those who are willing to, who are in the business of giving money not to make a profit, in theory, would be the entities that would fund something like this. So the goal is in the beginning, it'd be government, and then maybe in the phase 2 would be something like various foundations who might fund, like once we have a proof of concept up and running, you approach foundations who could fund local projects. So it doesn't have to be a national system, but just a local system in a local epidemiological zone, because if you just do it, say in the New York area, or the DC or some area, some metropolitan area, that could still have a lot of value because it's still, from a public health standpoint, it's one epidemiological region. So once we get some basic thing up and running, you take it to that group, and then we have something more mature, you could take it to insurance companies, and then you could get long-term sustainability that it's financially solvent and even profitable on its own. In the beginning, though, the adoption cost is going to be significant, where this would burn cash for a while, and it would take a while before you really started to see the growth. And so that was our hypothesis, and which is why we predominantly pursued government funding. And so the 3 key goals, prevent transmission, detect new cases, manage hospital patient flow. And this gets a little bit more onto the preventing transmission. Gets a little bit more into the weeds on this, but demand sensing for the healthcare supply chain. So this was the team that we kind of put together. As you can see, Prysm, SIMBA. We did bring Microsoft along, but again, Microsoft does 1,000 different things. And so there was this team, one of their teams that we are, one of the teams that we talked to that works with a funding agency that we were initially funding this to. So we brought them along, but it was much more of getting their logo on this, and they wrote a letter of support that we would build this on Microsoft Azure, and that's basically it. And they have a robust partner ecosystem. But the reality is that SIMBA and Prysm alone, us two, is not enough for, Notre Dame was coming along for their wearables expertise. Like eventually the longer term goal is to actually put this into like your Fitbit type wearables. And there are some algorithms that are out there, for instance, that based on what your wearables are able to detect on various kind of vital signs and other things, they can actually make a decent prediction whether you have COVID or not. It's very experimental algorithms coming out of Stanford University, but some of the stuff on this, since we initially pitched this idea, has been surprisingly promising, with something like a 70 to 80% success rate they can actually predict, which is kind of shocking. But bringing in the physical wearables expertise, we brought Notre Dame. That was really the only thing Notre Dame was giving us. It was this one department called Advanced Diagnostics and Therapeutics, and they would open source. They would use the Stanford algorithm that they open sourced anyways. And so they weren't really hardcore public health people either. They're more like diagnostics and therapeutics, so a very, very narrow range within med device, their team. So we didn't really have any real public health people. The university we were talking to dropped out. But we have very good members of in this group for what these two firms do, but we did not have a public health team, and that has been part of the problem. And so, this is when we initially was hoping to fund this, to have it be national beta released in January. That would have been now, proof of concept in November. But that was the initial goal, and some of this is dated. But what I will say on this slide is, to bring it back to this, is we did approach some of the crypto funds, and we were very surprised that we did not get interest from them, and we took an approach to them that was a little bit different than here. We actually led with the token a lot more. This one I'm giving you, this presentation is less focused on that. I guess I probably should have run with that now that I think about it, but it was a slightly different version of this that we pitched to them. This was like a part of it, but it was quite a bit bigger. And candidly, I'm not as familiar with all the details of that, which is why I'm not presenting it. Other people on the team are, at Prysm Group, our partner firm. But we did pitch a version of this to the crypto funds, and it was really surprising and confusing. But a lot of them said that, and I think it probably says more about them than it does about us. And I don't mean that in a bad way. You'll get what I mean here in a sec. They said that this is that we don't know anything about public health, and neither do you. That was feedback number one, but obvious. B, this could get a lot of users, and that's great. And you spend a lot of time talking about how you can get user adoption. But we don't really, that's what traditional venture capitalists care about, user adoption. Traditional software tech venture capitalists care about user adoption. We're crypto funds. We're crypto. We invest in crypto projects. We don't really care that much about user adoption. We're like, really? You don't care about user adoption? And he said, no, we care about this thing going up in value. Oh, so you're basically a pump and dump scheme. I didn't say that to them, but that's really what it was, is that this is too mainstream for us. Yes, you have a great plan for user adoption. The way you're presenting this is how you present to a normal venture capitalist. It could work, or a public health funders, it could work. Maybe to those types of funders, but we're interested in, can the token go up in value? Are people going to buy the token? And is it going to go up in value? And you have no plan for that. I'm like, well, yeah, it's a pump and dump scheme. We're trying to create something sustainable. And which to me really, and we got this, once we got it, Then we got it a second time. Well, first we're like, well, they're just weird, or maybe they just didn't understand us, or maybe they just maybe we just didn't communicate properly. Because you do that, we do the best we can. We're not always good communicators. So, and they're like, that must be a fluke. Then we went to the second one. They said the same thing. Like, okay, maybe we communicated poorly twice. All right. Or maybe there's just two bad apples. Maybe the third one, like, okay, now we have a trend. And this was, and candidly, this was more Prysm, our partner firms, because they are much closer to them than SIMBA chain is. They consult because they know these funds. They consult to these funds. They're their client list. We don't really have, SIMBA doesn't have a super close relationship to these funds. They do approach us to ask us whether we're going to launch a token or not. And we're like, no, we're trying to create a real business. Are you going to launch a cryptocurrency or not? When's a SIMBA cryptocurrency coming out? They ask us, like, yeah, we'll get back to you. But they were interested in, can this be a crypto thing that will then go up in value? Because that's how we make money. We don't really give a crap about your user adoption plan, but if you want us to introduce you to some venture capitalists, we'll do that. I mean, they're our friends, but that we didn't want to go that route. That's a really, really long and painful route. And so it was just kind of shocking because you're right. We don't really have a plan on creating a token that's going to go up in value. You make money. Like, we're not in this for a pump and dump scheme. No offense. I know it's a little bit crass term, but we're trying to create something sustainable. And so that's the feedback we got. So I'm rambling along a lot. And,
it sounds like another clear, reason why this didn't go off, didn't get picked up, because the audience was not appropriate. That is their definition and their metrics for return on investment. So that was not the right audience. And like I said, it may have been, like you said, the timing starting off, because again, the concept's wonderful, but it's a paradigm shifting concept that would have needed a lot of money at a time when everything was out of control and crazy. And this was probably a little too much. But at the same time, I'm guys, Eric, do you remember we had somebody on here that had a similar kind of trace and tracking? They had green zones or something like that. You remember that conversation? I was just curious though, so Anjon, who did win, or who did you find out? Because obviously this isn't,
there's nothing like this was funded by any place that we went to. They just didn't fund anything. They just didn't fund. They funded other stuff. Entirely, but not stuff that was likened to this in terms of
No. Okay.
Not that we're aware of. Not that we're aware of. Which is why we think that this should still be tried. We're going to keep trying a little bit, but
to get the right audience, to be sure. And then the team, because clearly they're wanting you to have some healthcare professionals on there, that kind of thing.
Hey, Anjon, I got a question.
Sure.
Have you ever considered any of the patient advisory groups and plugging any of them in? It's just because as I look at this, once again, this is completely centered around benefiting the patient itself. And unfortunately, I would love to say that the healthcare system
cares about patients.
That's the case. So I wonder if they would be much more receptive and served than to.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Well, who would they be? What are patient advisory groups, like advocacy groups for patients, or?
Yes, patient advisory councils. There's quite a few of them that
really. I don't even know what that is.
Yes.
Very obvious thing. I don't even know.
Yes. Yeah. As I was thinking this, and then I start to look at all the players and the people that are like, why are they not seeing this for the benefit that it's obviously going to provide, but they don't have the interest. They say they have the interest, but they don't. Like, I would have the interest because I want my healthcare data utilized the right way so that it completely benefits, me more than it does anyone else. But see, I would need someone then to bring it to me. And obviously the other systems, they don't care about that. They're more so have their own individual interests. Because it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And when you talk about, pain points, Eric, I just got a letter from an unnamed big healthcare organization here in California alerting me that my data in their system had been compromised, and it feels like over and over again, you get these notes from these large healthcare organizations going, hey, your data was compromised. And I know for me, one of the things that draws me to this whole digital identity solution is
Yes.
I'm just so frustrated with, my data being, my healthcare data, my vaccination data, all that stuff being out there, for some guy who's buying it on the dark web.
Exactly.
Yeah. 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 No, I think that is yet more reason why these types of privacy preserving technologies, like blockchain and related technologies are valuable,
Right.
and again, it's more of a blockchain play than a token play. So thanks for letting me kind of color outside the lines of pure kind of tokenomics. This is probably more of a blockchain play, but tokenomics is part of it. And tokenization
and appropriately so. We talk about tokenomics in just this way, in a way that it incentivizes behavior so that the system works. So no, that it's a totally appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, and to me, if for me, where I think there's potential excitement, I've been kind of developing, a thesis around this. This is for my big TEDx talk that's going to happen someday, right? And or at a blockchain conference maybe, or a TEDx conference, is that what you said about incentivizing and driving behavior. It's not just the monetary behavior, and so much of traditional kind of economics and tokenomics, for that matter, is still driven by the kind of the scarcity quotient. Let's just make something scarce and then it goes up in value. But humans are not just driven by scarcity. That they are driven. That's clearly a very important thing that people are driven by. But humans are much more complicated than that. And there's a lot of things that can drive humans and drive people, and we get very caught up in the scarcity mentality. That's kind of part of the dominant paradigm. If you'll let me kind of wax a little bit here, and it's not the only. And I think it comes from just the dominant way of thinking, and the way we're kind of all taught and even programmed to think, especially how we approach problems about scarcity being like a driver, and there has to be like a stick. If you don't do this, and then you get beaten, and this, that, the other thing. And the reality is that I think where tokenomics and blockchain technology more generally has the potential to really be really transformational is when you can devise mechanisms of behavioral change, collective action, and governance that go beyond just that, of scarcity and very, very traditional hardcore kind of market orthodoxy. And I know that can be controversial to say within any type of blockchain community. Although I'm going to guess that all of us here are going to be a little bit more out of the box than traditional blockchain communities, a little bit more so, but we're still a blockchain community, and we're still programmed to think very much around that scarcity quotient. And where I think this could be, where tokenomics writ large, and this is well beyond LHAS, is where we're still beginning to scratch the surface, is how do we develop mechanisms of governance, again, that is not confined to just looking at traditional dominant paradigm kind of scarcity driven ways of driving incentives. So that's a handful of stuff. I got to clean that up before I get to the TEDx talk. But
no, but let me just say, I 100% agree with you, and this is one reason why I'm so passionate about tokenization itself as an application of the technology, is because, as you said, Angie, everything now, for the most part in business, is setting it up as winners and losers.
Yeah.
It actually doesn't have to work that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
exactly right. Zero sum.
And I believe that you keep encountering people. I understand that they act like they're so forward thinking and so futuristic, but they still do see it in that kind of dichotomy of just winners and losers, and that's it, in one side or the other, rather than seeing all of this huge amount of green spaces we could be planning.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm kind of encouraged because there seems to be a resurgence in the understanding of crowd funding and crowd, crowdsourcing in different kinds of ways and being cooperative and that kind of thing. Seems like there's a bit of a resurgence in that space too. But again, as you mentioned, there is that ingrained capitalist mindset.
Mhm.
There's the winners, there's the losers, and there's that zero-sum game scenario. But yeah, all of that. I think there's again, I think that's part of the problem and the pushback, because your solution is flying in the face of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a paradigm shifting, disruptive kind of program that kind of shines the light on that, which is what really all of this COVID situation has shined a lot of lights on some really weak points in our system. But yeah, I think that, it just was too reflective.
Yeah.
And particularly amongst the audiences that thrive under that traditional setting.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
I feel you.
You had the wrong audience big time. So I think that was a great value add in Eric's share about the patient advisory.
Yeah. Can you name one, or like as an example, Eric?
You know what? I know there's.
I could just Google it. I mean, that's,
I know.
I can't name one right offhand that I have had any sort of experience with or something like that. But I do know there's a large percentage of them out there.
I will start Googling that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And I know that there's certainly advocate groups for different conditions too, like asthma and ADHD and all of that kind of thing. So, you may just have to go smaller in terms of use case for it, so that you find something like autism. Seems like everybody has on the spectrum these days, autism, ADHD or something like that, and then maybe have a smaller application that this would focus on, and then you'd have the backing of one of these groups, patient advocate groups. Yeah, but that was a great example of somebody who I think would make sense of this a whole lot better, because people are living longer, and the longer we live, we'll need this kind of information. You know? And to be in control of it, it also just helps your state of mind, as you're getting older. Because not everybody is infirmed as they get older. They're just getting older, and everybody that they know is dying off, kind of thing. So having some sense of control of their information is I think valuable, on a social emotional level. Yeah. But anywho. All right. So is this pretty much the project then? And this is your plan?
Pretty much it. Yeah. I think that, there is other things, we went through the slide, but this gets into, other ways to detect new cases. You can, other things, plans that we had of, the Stanford University Innovation Lab. And so we talk about, they were open sourcing their Fitbit algorithms. So that gives a whole nother dimension that was like further down the line, like potentially really exciting stuff. In order to minimize testing centers, LHAS algorithm prioritize patients who are greatest at health risks, like are they a smoker, are they a senior citizen, do they have other comorbidities? Like that's all stuff you could do to prioritize vaccine rollouts, which we're doing offline, but this could help with that kind of stuff, or testing center overloads. And same thing with managing, hospital flow. If you see that there is, like a real local, it could be an early detection system that in this particular zip code, there's a massive transmission risk. Like you would find this out sooner than through traditional means. Even giving you an extra week or two in advance could make a big difference if you're in a real hot spot. Like remember New York City last April when things were really, when nobody knew what hit us, and similar sort of thing. So, yeah.
And someone mentioned here in the chat that the insurance companies would be a great audience, and you mentioned them as one of your potential stakeholders. What was your response from that community at all?
This is, they tend to be, great point, and there was interest. I think they wanted something more than they wanted, like a live application. They weren't going to fund. They're not a venture arms. Insurance companies are notoriously conservative. And but their innovation arm says if you got something live, we could start to look at it. But yeah, I think the long-term play would be to turn this into something like a safe driving app. Well, not the only long-term play, but that a part of a long-term play, something like that, that insurance companies, health insurance companies could incorporate. But yeah, thanks, Denise.
Yeah, I feel like as we continue, because it's definitely a great program. As we continue, tech will wrap around it, like Talisha's always talking about, Internet of Things and whatnot, wearables, all these kind of things. I think it will find its place. It may just have to be a little more tight, tighten the focus, be more nichey to maybe get funded.
Yep. And go something a little more, specific. Well, we will keep you in the loop. So, and I'm sure, we people in my company, know a lot of your members, and so we will definitely keep you in the loop. And I will, I will come back. I'll be in the audience for a future BBC presentation if I'm invited.
Absolutely, you are always welcome. Everybody.
Hey, Andrew, first of all, let me just tell you, thank y'all for taking this on. I mean, we need more techno-humanitarians. So thank you for taking this on. This is one that I think will, once it's adopted, and eventually it will be, it's going to help a lot of people. So, it's great.
Well, join the fight. It's lonely. It's lonely, man. Help me out.
I hear you.
Well, listen. We thank you so much for your time. We won't hold you any longer, or the folks, if there are no questions. I don't see anything in the chat. Don't see anything in Q&A, but yeah, we definitely are behind you. We're starting from the grassroots up, Oh, here's someone posted. Oh, Denise is hot here. She's got, try talking with the Institute of Healthcare Improvement.
Okay, I will write that down.
Okay. Institute of Healthcare Improvement. All right, thanks, Denise. Okay, we're tracking along with the conversation here.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you, Denise.
Yeah.
Thanks, Denise.
Okay.
Okay, I wrote that down.
Alrighty.
Got a couple notes here.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I before we sign out, I did want to just remind our community. Oh yeah, she says she has a long experience with healthcare. So yes, thank you so much for attending. Yeah, I just wanted to make everybody aware of our fire sale going on at the Center for Blockchain Studies. Make sure you use your discount code. I think we are using, what are we using, guys? Is it BBC Fire Sale? Yeah, BBC Fire Sale as the code to use for 50% off all of our courses. So give it a go there. And again, thanks. Oh, here's another question. Is there another way to pull all of the, is there another way to pull all of them in the cart at once? Oh, that is a really good question. You're talking about the courses. That is really a good question. That's a good question. That is a good question. I'm not actually sure, to tell you the truth. I'll get in touch with you, Denise, to follow up on that, because that is a very good question. I may need to do something behind the scenes to check on that. Okay, thanks so much. That's a great question. All right. Well, again, thanks so much for everybody. Again, Anjon, I really want to thank you for your time and sharing the trials and tribulations of this. It really was valuable to us to help us understand the path of projects like this. And it really does speak to where we are in terms of, the reason why blockchain even came to being. There's just too much power in the center. We're trying to bring it to the edges, and empower every individual. And there's still a lot of pushback on that, even as a concept, not to mention the whole fact that it will require a infrastructure change and all of that kind of stuff, but just the ideology of it all is a little paradigm shifting to the powers that be. And it's not being, that's where a lot of the pushback is happening, but it can't be stopped. It's definitely happening. So while they're saying one thing, they definitely are preparing to take advantage of it.
Well,
But
thank
yeah.
you, thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Waddell. To tell Cherie I said hi. Still haven't met her. I'm still hoping to meet her. I've missed her
You
a couple
sure
times.
will.
I
You sure
will.
will.
Yeah, to tell her.
She'll get this replay.
Yeah, tell her, email me. It would be great to meet her. But I follow her. And
She
so,
is real. She's real.
she's real.
I've seen her.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know, right?
yeah,
Not like Satoshi Nakamoto or anything.
Right.
yeah.
Although
No,
she's our Genesis block here for sure.
Yeah.
Of this
No, I've
BBB.
she's written stuff like online. I think I've read it. I think so. I think I've read her
she's got
stuff.
a lot
but-
of tremendous content out there. And
Yeah,
and
I've read it.
areas.
So someday I'll meet her, but I thank you all for coming and thank you for your feedback and it's an honor to present here. And I hope to be back again. So
All right.
we'll see you on the other
Thanks so
side.
much for your
Be
time.
safe.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
All
Be
right.
safe out there.
All right. Good night, everybody. Be safe. Bye for now.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah.